Welcome to another edition of Feisty Projects. How are you today, Amber?
I'm well, Martin. How are you?
Me, I'm excited.
Are you feisty?
I'm feisty because to me, this is a feisty topic. This is a feisty topic. I can remember writing on this at least a decade ago because as I was learning about this topic, I had a lot of fun with it, but I also realized it's a double-edged sword because it can be quite dangerous.
Okay.
So the topic I'd like to talk about is persuasion. And persuasion, as persuasion hits specifically in projects. And so a good decade or more ago, I was reading Robert Cialdini's Science of Persuasion.
Okay.
And the research in there is spot on. It's amazing. It is some really good techniques if you want to influence people to say yes. And for me, influence is more invitation. Here's what I'm presenting. Think about it. Persuasion has a goal. Yes. One of the things I realized as I read the book was how many people in my daily life were trying to persuade me. And it did the opposite of what persuasion was going to be because I've caught you trying to get me to say yes outside of my own desire to say yes.
Which is why it doesn't work.
Yes. So I thought this would be a wonderful forum for us to talk about persuasion when we want people to say yes in projects, influence when we're just trying to put some ideas in front of them, when they can work and when they can tear things down.
Okay. Well, persuasion, when it relates to relationships with interest holders on a project, rarely works because it's not unlike when you lie on a project. Because you essentially, in a moment of being asked a question, you tell a version of the truth that you think that interest holder can handle in the moment. That white lie, let's call it, that you've just created has now created a secondary project that only you have to run. And in addition to the work, the actual work, the factual project work that you're doing, you now have to run this other project simultaneously. And that project is, but with this degree of difference, I told this interest holder. Now the trajectory of the truth has to be skewed so that I can always maintain that I never lied. And what I think sometimes we tend to do as humans is we think in the short term, it buys us time to get things straight because it doesn't blow up an issue. It doesn't make that interest holder want to, make a different decision or change trajectory. It gets us a yes from them essentially in the short term. And then what we hope, or what I shouldn't say what I hoped in the past when I used to do that would be that I could fix it all before it ever came back to bite me. But what that also really did for me as a novice professional was it made the workload really intense. It also created a level of perfectionism that I really relished in because I had to find myself awake at night thinking of all the slight variations and how I was going to manage it and the strategizing and essentially what is the roadmap of persuasion that I have to use to continue to garnish that yes from the interest holder. My lesson there was it was way too much work than it ever was in reward. Because the reward often wasn't much of a reward at all because it would all eventually come out. And I would be seen as having used a persuasion tactic on someone that may or may not have been successful. Or, and this has happened to me a few times, I got called on it right in the moment. Because why? Because people are not as clueless about persuasion as we wish they were. We're not. Like you just said, you upon finding this information and reading the research and the data, all of a sudden you were able to see with fresh eyes how people were approaching you with persuasion tactics, which is manipulative strategies to get you to do what they want. And you could see it all of a sudden, did that make you want to do what they said?
Oh, the very opposite.
Exactly. And in fact, probably made you distrust them.
Yeah, I would say for anybody who I caught, and I did It's one of those things. Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
And mostly with sales, but you're dealing with people who have an agenda where they want you to say
Right.
yes. That
Right.
can be your boss, because even your boss will be like, "Oh, you want to come in on Saturday? Oh, you're using technique X to make me say yes."
Yeah.
I get it. But yeah, I became quite good at calling people on it.
Right.
And if you're asking for the response, what I felt it did was it damaged rapport.
Mhm.
If we had a rapport and we had a conversation and things were going well, I like to think I bring authenticity because it's way less work.
Oh, well, and that's what I learned.
Yeah.
You just hit the nail on the head. What I learned was, holy crap, have I increased my workload? For what? Like, what did I gain? Nothing except more work for me.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that strategy isn't necessary, particularly in communication with interest holders and in projects. Strategy is incredibly necessary, but the strategy can't be disingenuous. And I think persuasion is the double-edged sword of that, in my opinion. Is that what you would say?
Yeah, I would absolutely say I love strategy. Strategy is one of those
Yeah.
things I love studying, I love looking at. And is there a certain degree of secrecy that needs to go with strategy? Depending on what we're talking about, absolutely. But even as a communicator who had to keep secrets,
Mhm.
I could be authentic and just simply say, "I can't tell you that."
Yeah, exactly.
Or I could be like, "No, it's really over here, and no, I don't want to do smoke and mirrors and things like that."
Oh, smoke and
Hey,
mirrors.
you don't have a need to know,
Yeah,
so I'm not telling you.
yeah.
It's authentic, but it's still genuine.
Yeah.
It keeps rapport, it keeps relationship.
Yeah, and I think it keeps rapport and it keeps relationship, but relationship and rapport also has to include, disappointment. It also has to if you tell me that um, I don't have enough security clearance to know what you know, that I don't like that. I don't like that. But the fact that it's true and factual is also something really important for me as a professional to come to grips with. For some individuals, I think we don't wanna go there. We don't want to say things that are gonna make them feel bad because we're trying to what? Protect them from feeling bad? But, it's not your role as a professional to protect everyone else at all those moments. Tough, honest, and I'm not talking about hurting people's feelings intentionally. I'm talking about speaking truth and honesty.
Yeah.
Speaking truth and honesty in a project, those are constraints that every single individual involved needs to cope and to deal with on their own. And when you, as a project manager, as a project team member, try to reduce the constraints by telling mistruths to people so that they will somehow feel better about you, what you do is you shortchange their growth journey. You literally are assuming that they can't handle the truth. And because doesn't that sound like a few good men? You can't handle the truth. Like literally, you're deciding, you're predisposing that you have knowledge that they can't handle the truth and that truth journey is not a journey that they're supposed to be on. Wow, that's arrogant. That's very arrogant to decide for you as a professional that you know best how someone else can handle the truth and you want to customize the truth to what? Protect them? No, that's not helpful. But I see this all the time. And I used to do it. And it used to keep me up at night because the complexity, you know, project work is uncertain enough. To create more complexity ourselves as professionals is, I mean, it's ludicrous. But I see us do it all the time. And I think, I think it stems from this fear of trust. Are we trust creators? Are we championing trust? Or are we just afraid because if it gets hard, we won't know what to do, or we'll feel things that we're not supposed to feel at work, or like I'm just amazed at how much almost like a human self-care cycle spins in these moments. Like truth sets free. Sets free what? Sets free all of it. But we don't share truth when we're in a persuasive environment because we're trying to use strategy to get something. And truth isn't the highest call in that moment.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And one of the things about truth, and I love where you're going with that, because I think this is important. We're talking about people feeling harmed or hurt or have rough feelings. Persuasion can do that, but truth can do that too.
Oh, absolutely.
And the reason I bring that up is I want to bring up the delineation that
Mm-hmm.
if I'm persuading you and you feel hurt by it, I've persuaded you and our relationship can be damaged.
Mm-hmm.
If I've truthed and you're hurt by it,
Yeah.
you're hurt by it,
Mm-hmm.
but the relationship remains intact.
Well, potentially. And that
Potentially. And
really
that's
is
where I
on,
wanted to go with.
and that's on the other person too. I mean, this is the thing about truth is that it sets free, but that doesn't mean it keeps everything the way it is. The truth hurts. Um, for me, in my professional experience, when I came up against hard truths about myself as a professional, it really hurt. It really hurt because I realized I wasn't who I thought I was. And my ego took a real hit. And in the midst of my ego feeling wounded, I had the opportunity, though, to take what was true and to have that inform my future self. So that truth became something that I was able to use and benefit to me, but it was painful. And in some ways, I look back and I'm like, oh, if somebody had just kept lying to me, that would have saved me a little bit. It would have given me a little bit more peace, but in hindsight, it would have delayed the inevitable learning that I had to do anyway. And I think this is the hard part. There are a lot of professionals that I work with and that I would hope very much to be able to coach that I can see are just wanting to avoid having to deal with the truth about themselves, the truth about the work environment that they create, and they're running from it, just hoping that it'll never catch up to them.
So, a curious question for you around that. We live in a world now where a job title of influencer exists.
Yeah,
This was
that's
not a
right.
job title
Yeah.
20 years ago, not even
Mhm.
close.
I know.
Um, but I mean, influencer is a type of persuader.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as you talk about wanting to run from having to deal with things, do you think the rise of media and
Mhm.
influencers has affected that? And where does that showing up in projects?
Yeah, because I think, communication has changed because we have put the power of communication into the hands of all people with technology. And, the idea, for instance, and I have to be cautious because I have a lot of healthy respect for higher education institutes. I work with them and I place value on education. However, a lot of these institutions have only worked because of their ability to can kind of control who learns and who gets educated. And they've created rubrics that are really tight. So not everybody can access that sort of information. Um, our current communication and social media and technology has blown the roof off of that. And our higher education institutes are kind of waffling because they're like, wait a minute, you have to come and pay us before you learn those things. And the world is saying, nah, we're now going to be able to create our own education opportunities, and there will be no boundaries, there will be no barriers, and that's put the screws to a lot of the contemporary and more traditional education. Influencers, though, I think have motivations, and depending on what is motivating them, you're going to get a persuasive view of what they're selling you. In the early days of the influencers growing, basically the whole thing started, to my knowledge anyway, on YouTube. And, people who had YouTube channels that were doing really interesting things weren't necessarily influencers. That wasn't the motivation. The motivation for them might be that they love to share certain things and they just really interested, they're very captivated by something, and they just start to produce content that's really engaging for them, that they really enjoy. And other people were attracted to that. And there was this sort of genuine desire to just share. The influencer piece came from where? From monetization. So when you bring something like money into the equation, you immediately put a fiscal value on people's interests. Influencing becomes a very different thing. And I think in project worlds, this is what we do. We create an environment where we've placed fiscal value on the work we're going to do to produce a product, service, or result. And we're going to use any tactics and any means we have within our disposal to get to the end of the line to produce the thing. And persuasion is a part of that. But, there are a lot of disingenuous influencers. There's a lot of online influencers that you go, man, like, I bet you they don't even use the stuff they're hawking. We used to see this just in celebrity, where you would see celebrities like, do we really believe that some of the top female or female-born celebrities in the world use L'Oreal hair care products? I mean, really? Do we really believe
I'm not a doctor, but I play one on
that's
TV.
but some of them, do we really believe that some of these most female-born famous actors are putting their head in the sink, running the water, opening up a hair dye kit, and self-coloring their hair? No, we don't. Some of us maybe want to believe that, but in reality, when we think about it, wait a minute. Did I buy that because I think that person actually does it themselves? Or did I buy it because it was accessible to me? I mean, persuasion, influence, the point here is these are human ways of communication for us to inspire emotion in others. And how we use our communication to inspire, to lead, to guide, or to convince, we tap into these persuasion tools, and they're not bad. But being an influencer, as we would call it today, online, I think a lot of it's motivated out of the money that people are making. Are there people out there trying to do good? Sure, there's people out to do good, but money will find its way into all of the people still trying to do good. And money is not a great way for people to connect. It's just a tool. And the tool itself can create and inspire motivations that aren't necessarily in the best interest of people, you know? So I think persuasion, you can turn to politics and see persuasion. Were we persuaded? Let's say, in the year of 2025, which is the year we're in, we have had a lot of political stuff going on. We'll just relegate it to North America. Although, let's say globally, even it's happening a lot. What are the politics that are we being well persuaded? Um, is fear and persuasion a big motivator? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't believe that healthy relationships are necessarily being built based on persuasion. I think healthy relationships are built in the one-on-ones, in the micro moments. And politicians that knocked on your door in the last election and you opened your door to them and you spoke to them face to face, they're more likely to have gotten your vote than anyone else. Or if that conversation didn't go so well at your door, or if you didn't open the door because you were mad they were knocking, you also probably voted your conscience based on those actions. So I think, people are incredibly complex, and persuasion doesn't work like a cookie cutter. If I say this, I can get this person to do that. You've got to have lived in that person's life a long time to understand their motivations, to then know that if you use this tactic, it's going to work on them. It was just a lot of subtlety that's going on. And in projects, it's the same. Interest holders are unique, every single one of them. They don't vote and make decisions on projects with all the same motivations. Some of them really do care about the bottom line. Some of them don't. Some of them care about the future projects that they have to finish this project in order to get to. So they just want it over. Some of them have no interest in being on your project, but they don't have a choice because you're doing work that affects them. And so, using persuasion tactics to try to get them to do what you want, it's a risk. Wouldn't you say?
Oh, look, and we've known each other a long time. So whenever it comes to persuasion, I I think persuasion is a tool like any other tool you can put in your tool belt.
Mhm.
I might use it in limited circumstances in parenting.
I was just gonna say, I immediately thought of parenting.
Yeah, like I think there are some places where its use is quite obvious in parenting.
Mhm,
Um, but in a professional sense,
mhm,
where there's a professional relationship,
mhm,
I would never use anything other than influence.
mhm.
Um, and I wouldn't use anything other than influence simply because if I value the relationship, then I value your no.
Yeah.
And in fact, you and I don't always agree. In fact,
Oh gosh, no.
if I look at the last years, there's lots of times either one of us has come to the other person's idea over long periods of time.
Yeah.
But the no or the truth that hurts is the genuine value. And so, well, yes, influence has a space, and I do believe in influencing. Here's some good data. Pick it up, put it down, do what you want with it. Trying to get someone to say yes, probably not useful if you value relationship.
Yeah, and I think, once again, it's pretty arrogant to say that you think their yes is the right thing because, that's very you deciding on behalf of others. And who are you to decide? And unfortunately, because of the patriarchal kind of professional world that we have seen emerge out of the Industrial Revolution, and it's still thriving today, part of why it um, is so resistant to the new ways of thinking about people as people in a workplace and caring about emotions and caring about truth. Because who cares about truth? Just do as you're told. They're being challenged because it is pushing up against this idea that they're in control, that they, whoever they is, CEO, head of the board, the whole C suite, they collectively know best for everyone. They collectively have decided that they know, they have their finger on. And so it really isn't about getting your perspective. They've already made their decision. So that's also why it's so important for them to persuade you to say yes, because yes is the only option they'll take from you. There's a lot of amazing professionals that are working in places right now that won't be there much longer because their authority, their hierarchy is expecting them to agree to stuff that they will never agree to. And, a lot of great professionals are voting with their presence in companies like that, where they say, no, we cannot all just say yes to an agenda that's being told to us. Invite us to participate in building the agenda, invite us into the project planning, have our own gifts and skills inform how we're going to work and create, then the trust and the rapport and the relationship can be built. But persuade us to agree with you because you just know better, that's not going to work. Arguably, it never worked because that model was never about elevating everyone. It was about elevating someone. And I think elevating the community, the organization, the project, and making that the most important thing. That's the model that brings health and wealth for that matter. Um, but it means that these individuals who are persuaders and or influencers that are deciding that yes is the only right answer, it puts them in their place. And that's why they're resisting. So I think is persuasion is a lesser form of influence. Um, and I agree with you. I think it doesn't foster trust and build rapport. It's not respectful of others. It's, I've already decided for you. So let me tell you why you're going to tell me what I want to hear.
Well, and I thank you for your insights on persuasion, for your insights on trust. Uh, I would like to persuade you that this is our
You're
time today is over.
going to persuade me, are you?
I'm gonna attempt and say, but I will come back with an authentic thank you.
Thank you.
These conversations are important
Mhm.
in a day and age where I think I read somewhere recently, influencer is one of the most sought after positions by people in high school today. Like, we're all gonna, and I'm like, okay, great, but
influencers.
yes, there's a yearning to influence. And how do we make sure that we acknowledge that well? So
And hey, if they're influencing with themselves, genuine, honest truth, then I think that's actually really cool. But what's the motivation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you. And so we're not going to ask for any subscribers on this one. Intent. All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.